This is what DPReview website looked in November 1999. DPReview was 1 year old at the time. Let's go down the memory lane and look back. Hi, it's Peter here. Let's get right into the business. You have most likely heard that DPReview is closing down, so I'm not gonna so much talk about that, but it's interesting to see what the website looked way back. The oldest page that I could find from Wayback Machine was from November 1999, and it was 1 year old then, like I already said. This page has some interesting things. Over here there is info about Netscape. Remember Netscape. DPReview wanted you to add it to my Netscape. Don't remember exactly what my Netscape is, but most likely it was some kind of a bookmarking thing. There is also news about a memory card, and this is quite interesting. A whopping 224 megabyte CF Type 2 card. That would take about 10 to 12 images from my OM5. And the price of that memory card was $999. I checked what the value for that would be if it was in today's money. And according to the inflation calculator, the price in today's money would be $1,600. That's a pretty hefty price for a 224 megapixel memory card. How big would a memory card have to be that you would pay $1,600 for it? That would probably be about the same price your camera body costs. So how big would that memory card have to be? And before we look into what was the first digital camera that I could find from DPReview's database, let's talk about why they closed it down. Most likely DPReview is not making any money for Amazon. Amazon bought it in 2007 because the affiliate revenue that DPReview at the time was generating was so big, so Amazon decided that, yeah, let's buy it so it will be cheaper for us. And most likely that has changed. The camera sales in Amazon has most likely gone down. I don't know, maybe pandemic was one reason, and the general sales of cameras has gone down for years, and 2007 was the start of the high peak because 2012 the camera sales were at its peak, and most likely Amazon made a lot of money through DPReview. Another thing that might have affected the revenue that comes from DPReview is DPReview TV on YouTube, because first of all they don't have any ads, so it just starts right away. They don't monetize their channel at all, if I recall it correctly. I don't remember seeing any ads on their videos. So people don't have to go to DPReview that often, they just watch the videos. So also the consumption of information has changed, and the videos don't make money for DPReview the same way as the site used to do. And then there's of course the question about making profit. Why would Amazon keep on losing money with the DPReview site if it doesn't generate any money in camera sales, like I said? Why would it have to be free? That beats me a bit, to be honest. Of course I would like to have it, it's nice. I've used it for looking around for camera specs and stuff like that when I've had to compare something. But then I have a question for you. How much would you pay for a subscription for DPReview? If they introduced a subscription-based model, so you have to pay for that site, how much would that be? Please let us know in the comments down below. For me, probably $10 a month could be something that I could pay. Maybe 11, it depends, but roughly $10. And that's something that I would probably pay. I'm not sure if that would be enough for covering the pretty hefty costs that a site like that needs. They need a lot of money because they're employing 14 people, plus I suspect that they have some freelancers too that do some stuff, but 14 people is quite a lot. And like I said, also the YouTube channel, making YouTube videos like they have done is not cheap either. And then of course you might wonder why they did not sell it to anyone. We don't know if they tried. Maybe nobody wanted to buy it. Maybe the price was too high for it. We don't know that. But also just leave it like it is and pay for the server space for that, so that it would lie in some corner of Amazon cloud and we could still use it. Why not do that? The most obvious thing that I suspect that Amazon is doing is that they will take it down so that it won't be publicly available, but for some way or somehow they will monetize the database of all the camera specs and stuff like that. How they do it, no idea. Back to the memory lane. The first camera I found was Kodak DCS420, a 2 megapixel camera with 1-inch sensor DSLR. And it was made in cooperation with Nikon because it says Nikon on top and it had Nikon F mount. And speaking of Kodak, I almost bought the DCS Pro camera. It was a Canon EF mount Kodak DSLR full frame, and I'm glad I did not because it had some major flaws. I don't really remember what it was, but after reading it, not buying it luckily, after reading about it, I think there was a constant firmware updates because there was always something wrong. And if that camera had been successful, most likely we have a totally different story in digital cameras. Kodak could be a major player. But we don't know that. And that was actually the last DSLR or interchangeable lens camera that Kodak made in 2004. They had two versions of it. One was for Canon mount and the other one was with Nikon mount. But like I said, if that had succeeded, we would have a different story about Kodak nowadays. Now we see it as a company that could not survive digital transformation. But to be honest, they did, because the most early cameras were Kodaks, the big ones. But they messed it up with this particular camera, and I think that killed their photographic business. I also looked into the forums. I wasn't very active, but between 2003 and 2005, I asked a lot of questions and talked about raw conversions, because of course that was a new thing. The raw converters, they were constantly changing and having different raw converters. And of course I was interested in that, how to get the best out of my cameras. And that was the main thing for me. And also found this. So I was very unhappy about the topics that they had, or not the topics, but the subject, that they were more about the gear than photography itself. And after 2005, I just quit writing to the forums. One reason was that I think it was around 2005 that I, rented a studio and concentrated on studio photography for about 9 years from that. So that was of course something that I had a lot more things to do than just to rant about cameras in forums, and that's one reason that I quit doing that. And then what are your thoughts? I made a community post about this same issue and some of you commented already how you feel about this. But if you haven't seen that post, please comment in the comment section of this video. How do you feel about this? And what are your memories of DPReview? How do you see it, and what's next? What are the sites that you might start watching next, or not watching but reading? Petapixel is probably one, and especially the YouTube channel, because Chris Nichols and Jordan Drake are starting their own channel I think it's in May, in Petapixel. And that's going to be interesting, because I hope they can do more about photography also than not only about the gear, because Petapixel is a lot more towards photography and the business around photography than DPReview ever was. So I'm looking really forward to that thing and transformation, maybe DPReview TV to Petapixel YouTube channel to be more photographic centric. I hope that. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.